और चेक करना रिंकू जी का, एक मिनट, अभी मैं लाइव हो गया और लकी वो ऑन ही कर देखिए, स्पीकर ऑन कर देखिए, इसके ऊपर चलाइए। Sorry audiences, because of some technical glitch we will not be able to connect with Lamaji directly on Zoom, but what we are trying to do is talk to Lamaji on telephone, and I will put the cell phone on the loudspeaker, and we will try to hear his thoughts through an audio. So is that Lamaji, can you say hello? Hello. So hello.
Hello.
Yeah. So Lamaji, I will just put a line of introduction for Lamaji for those who are joining us today. Venerable Jongsar Khyentse Rinpoche is a well-known figure in the Buddhist world, and he has been doing a lot for spreading the Dharma all over the places. He is a very popular speaker, prolific writer, and also he's an institution builder. He has built several institutes in India, also in Bhutan, and now he has set up institutions all over the places. He's also a filmmaker, and more than that, he's also a public intellectual, a critic who is sort of stirring the proverbial hornet's nest, so that we can be awakened to what is happening around us. I can say a lot about venerable master, but we will directly hear from him. About the topic today. The topic today is reawakening Dharma in India. Now, reawakening Dharma in India is a very important topic for all of us today, and this topic generates a lot of interest among the people. So the first question to you, Lamaji, is as a Buddhist teacher, as a Buddhist scholar, how do you look at the Indian history, Indian culture from the Buddhist lenses?
Okay. Now, first of all, I'd like to say hello and offer my greetings and best wishes to you, Mukesh. Thank you for inviting me, and also to everyone who is listening. I'm sorry that I could not really come to the proper whatever, the Zoom channel or whatever, but this is something. This is what makes the life quite interesting. Anyway, Buddhism, which the very title of it, I think, was invented later. Today, if you look at the world, there are people who are considered themselves as medicine, scientists, I don't know, engineers, basically those who are trying to look at the reality and make the life better. Now, 2,000 years ago, this is how Buddhists, so-called Buddhists today, 2,000 years ago, this is how, the Indian king, the queen, the merchant, intellectuals, that's how they that's how they view so-called Buddhists. They are basically like I don't know, if you like scientists, those who are trying to see the reality of the, the life inside, outside, everything. But anyway, now Buddhism is considered whatever. Buddhism is now in the category of religion. We have to stick with that. Now in India's case, it's very interesting because Buddha Dharma or Buddhism is so venerated elsewhere. Like China is, it's so venerated there. Japan, Korea, Thailand, Sri Lanka, so many places. And even though Buddhism was born in India, it took somebody like Dr. Ambedkar to actually realize the importance and the greatness and the value of this wisdom tradition. So I don't know. I have a very big feeling. It's like, wow, it's not for Dr. Ambedkar. Buddhism is dead in India, and this is how I see. I'm in so far. I've been living in India for some time, and if your specific question is how do I look at the history of India and culture in relation to Buddhism, I have to say that not for Dr. Ambedkar, practically it's gone, it's dead. But thanks to Dr. Ambedkar, we have a little bit of hope.
Rinpoche, your love for India is very much evident from the books that you have written, particularly this the book about a pilgrim's guide to the sacred sites of the Buddha, the best foot forward, and the way you have modeled your book, what makes you not a Buddhist, based on the biography of the Buddha. Then it's very clear that you have this tremendous and immense love for the Buddha and India. So in that case, when you look at the current situation in India, what do you think? What should be the approach and the strategy to bring back this very great tradition that was launched by the Buddha in India, back to India?
A lot of scientists, a lot of even intellectuals like recently people like Yuval Noah Yuval Noah Harari. He said that basically everything is a story. Democracy is a story, relationship is a story, money is a story, and you can say it's also a story. But what we really need to know is Buddha himself said it is a story. So it is Buddhism, the Buddha Dharma is so avant-garde or progressive. We are talking about the wisdom that is found 2,500 years before. And we are not talking about some revelation from a God or some almighty thing outside of this place. We are talking about a simple, normal living being who discovers this system. And even though everything is a story, there are things that are quite, blatantly, what do you call it, not in the realm of the story, I would say. For instance, when I'm hungry, it's not a story. It's real. I'm hungry. When I'm suffering, it's real. It's not really a story or a dream, the pain of it. Likewise, the mind that we have, that you have, I have, I'm talking, you're listening, many people may be listening, and when you listen, there's something that is listening. It's called mind. And this mind is not really a story. At the same time, this mind is the one that is driving everything. This mind is the one that is making us happy, not happy, greedy, not greedy. The mind is the most important. And find. If you really want to find out, you will never find anything that is more complete, anything that is more systematic, more, I don't know, logical, rational, analytical, more empirical. You will never find anything that is better than Buddhism, I would think. And this is a very much rooted. The teachings of the Buddha was first taught in India. So it is very much India and Indian and job, their duty to revive it. More than ever, we need the tradition of Buddha Dharma.
So, Rinpoche, when you were talking about the word as a story and how the mind creates stories, as told by the scientist Yuval Harari, and a kind of a story that is being propagated in India about Buddhism, that it is dead. But as a Tibetan master and the lineage holder of a living tradition, you know that India has a sacred geography. There are places all over our country which speaks volumes of the Buddhist past and the Buddhist practices till the 16th century at least. And even after that, the tradition of the saints like Kabir and Raidas. So, what kind of elements that you find in Buddhism which can alter the story that has been told time and again by the dominant media or the forces there are? So, how do we create a kind of as you said, if we can use the word fact-based stories to make Indians understand that they are sitting on the treasure trove of Buddhism?
Right. Okay. Now, like many Indian traditions, wisdom traditions, India has been colonized for a long time. So, not just Buddhism, probably many other Indian wisdom traditions got scattered, got declined, I don't know, watered down, all that. Now, yes, I follow Tibetan tradition, and I consider we are like a Chela, we are the disciple of the great Indian wisdom tradition called Buddhism. And it is not only Tibetans who is following it. There are Chinese, there are Japanese, there are Korean, there are Thai, there are Burmese. The wisdom tradition of the Buddha is still very much alive outside. I mean, the text to sure, but neighboring the place. And all of these people, the followers of the Buddha, are very much eager to sort of re-establish, reawaken the wisdom spirit in India for sure. Now we have to, of course, we have to be aware that in today's world, as you were mentioning, there's the social media, and then there's all kinds of, the world is changing basically. And as the world changes, values change. And at the moment, a lot of values that values not only in India but in Asia are so much influenced by the West. And this is where I think stakeholder of Buddhism must also be very cautious how much of Buddhism, how much of the teaching of the Buddha is actually established again, how much is heresy, how much is watered down. This is something that we need to pay attention to.
That's very beautifully explained, Rinpoche. You have written a wonderful paper a few years back, that is 2015. Like as always, you create a lot of controversies with your straightforward views on the realities around. And the paper was titled as "How India is Squandering Its Top Export, the Buddha." So there you have, yeah. That was a wonderful paper that you have written. So when we look at that paper today, in terms of the squandering, the wastefulness of India and Nepal, that they are not trying to make, if we use the word, use the Buddha to change their societies, to change their economies, and to change their culture. Can you throw some light on the essence of that paper, Rinpoche?
Yes. I was just saying, I just may record, briefly what I have written. I was saying, that India is a full of system tradition. There's so much system here. There's so much and legends, and they are so beautiful. I have respected, I have appreciation towards all of them. But I was sort of saying that, that so-called Hinduism, where people talk about Shiva, where people talk about Brahma, where people talk about Kali, these are spiritual being or a sort of a god. They're not, they can't really say they're here. Now, Shakyamuni Buddha was basically raised in India. Buddha taught in India. He was a human being. He was just like you and me. And this is something. And then what he taught is not like some sort of a survival thing that taught you some shrine, how to live, how to eat, how to, sort of wage war, how to defend yourself. Not like that. The things that he has taught actually is so progressive and so much relevant today. I mean, as we look at our life, individual life, as a nation, as the world, as the globe, his teachings such as Mornomitsu or his teachings on Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, we could, as an individual, as a school, as a group, as a nation, I mean, if, for instance, like the nation of India has invested a little bit of time and energy on something like, like a principle of Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta in schools, in universities, in their planning, economy, ecology, environment, India will be leading the world today in peace, in harmony, in economy, everything. So this is something sometimes I feel very frustrated why India is forgetting Buddhism.
Rinpoche, Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said that though the Bodhi tree is not there visibly seen, but the roots are very deep and they are still very fresh. So if you can put a little bit of water and some fertilizer, the Bodhi tree will blossom again. What do you think about this statement, Rinpoche?
This is a very important statement. And this is a statement that is talking directly to people like you, Mangesh. And also there are a lot of people who are following, I don't know, I've met lots of incredible, really incredible, devoted, so smart, so intelligent, so dedicated people in Tagalog, in Pune. What Babaji had said is directly, talking to, especially to you guys. So I hope that you guys really pay attention to this.
Rinpoche, I am going to read something from your writing. It's about that paper I was referring to that you wrote in 2015. It says that one component of that attitude stems from caste issues that are still so powerfully dominant in India today. Millions of Buddhists in the state of Maharashtra who were brought to the Buddhist path by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar are less committed to the teachings of the Buddha than to their wish to be free of the stigma of their low caste status. Important and understandable though that wish is, such a political social agenda may not be helpful either to their own spiritual path or to Buddhism altogether. Now the question is, Rinpoche, that when we look at the society around us, the political system, the social structures like racism, gender issues, casteism, and the discrimination comes in so many forms now. Like the people in America are discriminating against the people of Chinese origin. The Chinese are discriminating, on the basis of race. The Africans, and this mesh of discrimination is going all over the places. So, as a Buddhist, how do we make sense of this this social, political, and these discriminatory structure that are coming into play. What should we do in this situation, Lamaji?
Very good. You brought it up a very important question, important issue. You know, first of all, I'd like to say the fact that Buddha wrote this 2,500 years ago, this is quite amazing. I mean, as you are saying, even today, we still have this problem of caste, color, and gender, and all of that. Buddha was already speaking 2,500 years ago. What we need to do is we need to invest time, energy, money, I don't know, everything on bringing back culture. I think during the Buddha time, for instance, like one of the key monks who is supposed to, in Buddhism, the Vinaya is considered the most important, one of the most important practices. And head of the Vinaya practice, he actually appointed a barber who is considered very low caste and all of that during that time. So something like that, what is to really bring this culture? We need to really establish this culture. And we as a human being, there's something good about human beings. If we are patient, if we are skillful, if we are humble, this kind of culture can be, placed slowly. I have a strong hope, especially, after visiting Nagalok, I can see in about one more generation, I think if situation, if the trainings like this, what's happening in Nagalok or elsewhere, like Dr. Ambedkar's followers, if they can follow them, if they can pay some attention to this, it will take maybe longest one generation. Of course, not all the problems because we are, defiled, ignorant human beings, but I'm quite sure that it will become much, much better.
That's very nice to hear that, Rinpoche La. One of the things that's about your teaching that stands out is you always talk about destroying the old perceptions. And you also has written and spoken about visualization as a tool to destroy those old perceptions and, cleanse the sense doors through which we can see the reality as it is. So when our minds are so much dominated by the old perceptions like caste and, discrimination based on the color and whatnot, so how do we, smash this old architecture of mind and this old game that we play all the time with ourselves, the self identity, the self, and, creation of this world based on our emotions or afflictions? So what do you think, you are also a kind of coming from a tradition which brings the best of all the different schools together and create a kind of a tapestry or a rainbow to accommodate all these different diversities. So what kind of approach, Rinpoche La, that we should bring today in this world and smash those, old perceptions, the old architecture of mind, the old ways of seeing the world? How do we do that?
I think this is where art, music, creativity can really help.
Okay.
And especially for the younger generation, citing some texts from the sutras and the shastras, maybe not enough. This is where we need to bring art, music, creativity. Through that, we can change the perception. If you look at our habit of culture, it's always like this, isn't it? It's through the sort of migration or the change or transformation of colors and symbols and the shape. I think this is where I think we should pay some attention.
Right. So, that is a little bit evident from particularly the book that you wrote, the very controversial title, The Guru Drinks Bourbon, and you have put up there very beautiful photographs and some of the artwork there is very provocative and very, very, I could say perception shattering. And also your films like Vara, A Blessing, and also Hema Hema, where you use the mask to communicate very deeper truth. Can you throw some light on your own creativity in this regard, Rinpochela?
Well, my own creativity, I don't want to speak too much because I myself, I'm an amateur, and I aspire to, like do better. I try, I try to sort of, express my inner feeling through these, if any of this work does sort of change people sort of like people hang up or people entanglement or people suppleness, then I'm very happy. But I don't want to really I don't want to really claim too high with my own activity like creation.
That I can understand. I didn't want to directly ask you that question, but I thought some of the creative people who are listening today might benefit from the process by which you create such kind of a beautiful artwork using different media. And I thought that would be interesting for some creative people listening. But let's go to another question, Rinpochela. That you are very fond of Ashoka and the Buddha Ashoka. He always comes in your lot of institutional symbolism and all. So compared to the Ashokan India, what kind of the message that the politicians or the political masters take from Ashoka, as we are leaning towards more populism, more authoritarian state? What kind of message that they pick up from this great emperor Ashoka?
Many of these great emperors, especially the Buddhist king, accounts are not too well kept and well documented. So my knowledge about them is very limited. As you say, I'm very, very fond of people like Ashoka, Kanishka, and Harshavardhana. I guess obvious reason is because I'm a follower of the Buddha, and anyone, a king who really venerates the value or the wisdom that people taught, they have to be quite different king, because usually the kings are always hungry for power. They want to be more rich, they want to be more powerful, they want to expand their nation bigger, they want to, they want to do more, they want to become more rich, more powerful. Here, Buddha's wisdom is totally opposite of this. Yes, they were like such a big follower of the Buddha. For instance, Ashoka's case, both his son and the daughter become bhikshu and bhikshuni. And that is quite an amazing because, basically the Maurya dynasty, I think that was the end of the Maurya dynasty, right? Because, they all become practitioners. And this is the kind of the leaders that we today need. People who are reluctant to lead, reluctant to be the dictator and authoritarian. Good example, I think Ashoka and Harshavardhana and Kanishka, these people should be taught in the Indian school, in the high schools and stuff like that.
Rinpochela, taking a cue from your institutions, you founded this very fascinating institute called Deer Park. And the idea was to promote a kind of a dialogue between different philosophies and different religious ideas and thoughts. So what do you think is the importance of these open dialogues and critical thinking today when we look at the world as we are now in?
We we are doing nothing new. I mean, Buddha, our master, has strongly protested that no matter who we follow, even his own teaching, we must first examine, analyze, cannot give them at its face value. Don't follow Buddhism just because it was taught by the Buddha. So he was the one who taught us this. We are just keeping that advice. We are just keeping that tradition. This is a very important tradition, especially in India. India has that, tradition of, questioning, reasoning, argument, and so on and so forth.
Rinpoche, can you throw a gloss on this word that you are, I think you are very fond of, Siddhartha's intent? What is Siddhartha's intent?
Oh, that's a name I just made it up because we have an organization in India that is supposedly to help promote Buddha Dharma. So when we registered the name, I came up with the name Siddhartha's intent. Siddhartha, the Buddha's, one of the Buddha's name, and intent as in intention.
So I will go back once again. I think we will take not more than 10 minutes now because we can understand that you are busy. But the analogy that you have given of the tea and teacups, and tea being the same and the cups differ from culture to culture. It can be made up of anything. So in today's world where we see so many forms of Buddhism, so many ways people are trying to communicate Buddhism, how can we differentiate between the tea and the teacups?
Oh, that one might take a bit of a, that one requires hearing and contemplation, and of course, the meditation. But, this is tricky because even though the tea is what we are drinking, cup is important, and but our human mind gets distracted many times with a cup, and we end up forgetting the tea. I think your question regarding how do you differentiate anything that is falsifiable, anything that can be deconstructed, anything that can be basically what do you call it? That can be refuted is not the case in this case. It's not the Dharma.
Okay.
For instance, like anicca, everything is impermanent. Now that one, you cannot really refute. Everything is impermanent, no matter where you go, no matter when it is. Now, how you meditate on this impermanence? By sitting straight, or lying down, or I don't know, dancing. That's really depending on different people, different cultures, different age, so on and so forth.
Right, Rinpoche, I think this is very important question that we face today. When you wrote this book, what makes one not a Buddhist? What makes a thing saying that whoever commits violence is not a Buddhist? That's like a very pithy sentence that you come up with in the end of the book. At the end of the book, the question is, we to change the things in the world, we need some force. Now that force doesn't need to be violence, but some kind of a force. We can say it energy. In the Ambedkarian terms, you call it energy. So what kind of an energy that we need to bring today to transform this, these ugly realities around us?
I think you are talking about being firm, right? Being firm and unmovable. That's not necessarily important, is it?
Yeah. Right. So there are a lot of people who are listening to us throughout the world, and as we know that we are beset with this big problem of COVID-19, everybody is like I won't say the word scared, but uncertain, and they don't know what is going to be the status of the things to come. So what message would you like to give it to a lot of people who are listening today? They are coming from all over the places throughout the world. What should be the Buddhist approach in this uncertain and difficult times, Rinpoche?
Well, you know, all those who are dead, dying, and those who are really being, become a target of this whole, also the way it has been structured, so to speak, and because of that, I think people are losing jobs, and a lot of people are becoming hungry, displaced, and I feel for them, I pray for them, I hope they soon recover, they soon free, they will soon be free from these challenges. Having said this, I think this is maybe one in a lifetime chance to also really look at the next, after this, now what? Individually, in groups, as a nation, as globally also. Because, the way we did until now wasn't that wise. We have really, made the world, we do not really care about the earth. I don't think that ever since the COVID-19, skies are becoming more blue, the animals are becoming a little bit more free and not afraid of us. All of that is a great thing. And this is like all the cosmic conditions, there's always a lot of positive things that we can look into. So I think, sometimes it makes me kind of, upset, like when you read newspapers or watch television, everybody from the top of the world leaders, all they talk about is economy. Like how this is going to be a disaster, so on and so forth. But yeah, maybe we should worry about the economy, but now maybe we should really think about the different kinds of economy. We don't necessarily, for instance, maybe we don't need to drink, strawberry juice coming from New Zealand. That's maybe not a great thing to do. And our grief as a human, our grief becomes so insatiable, and one day we may want to go to a holiday to the moon, every year. And that's probably not the wise thing.
Right. So in other words, that we need to think about the new ways of doing the things, the new approaches to how we are living our lives now, and
I think so.
Right. So this is the last question, Rinpoche La. India is a very youthful nation. Our median age is like 27 years. So as a young nation, a lot of young people in this country. It's not a country which is aging, but lot of scope for spreading the Buddhism. Like as you said, there is no village in this country where people do not have the statue of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and they have natural love for the Buddha in this country, particularly among the followers of Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and they are a huge number all over the places. So, what will be like your message, kind of a terse and direct message to the young people?
Well, young people in general, and especially young people in India, I want to say this. I don't know, for some reason, I don't know who did this, but somehow people seem to make it look like Buddhism is all about sitting and do meditation and think about impermanence and all sorts of gloomy stuff,
Right.
which is totally untrue. They should look at the sutras, they should look at the shastras. If the young people want to have fun, I would say how to have fun now, but you can also prepare to have some ongoing fun. You understand? So this is something that young people in India, they should really explore on this. Another thing, I think many people, many like intellectual thinkers, they are saying that in the future our biggest problem is going to be identity problem. I think that is already happening, isn't it? I mean, we have the identity politics now. So when we talk about, okay, people can have lots and lots of money, house, car, whatever, but at the end of the day, identity, confidence matters a lot. So if the young people really want to come back to the self-confidence, they need to look into themselves. And as I said in the beginning, there is no system that has more complete, systematic, gentle, harmonious way to look into ourselves than what was talked about the Tathagata. So I would strongly, but here, don't even take my voice, just because I said so. As Buddha said, please analyze, examine, and see yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Rinpochela, that was a very astonishing thought that you have given for the youngsters to think through. I don't know what is the status of things there in Bir, but I hope the storm subsides soon and you have all the connectivity sorted out. Before we end this conversation, I would like to request you to give a few words as a concluding remarks on what we discussed today. Rinpochela.
Well, my concluding remark is really to, in our life, the only thing that makes our life peaceful, harmonious, and content is really knowing yourself. By yourself. Yourself by yourself. Not something that is dictated and taught and interpreted by someone else or imposed and forced by someone else. You have to know yourself by yourself. So, definitely everyone, especially young people in India, I like you to think about this, and there's a really good method on how to do this in the Buddhist sutras and the Shastras. Thank you.
Rinpochela, this is what exactly Babasaheb Ambedkar said in 1936, where he was addressing thousands of his followers. He said, don't depend on others, don't make other people your light, atta deepa bhava, be your own light. And in 1936, he said, citing the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, he said that if you keep this teaching of the Buddha in your mind, nothing can go wrong. Be your own light. This is what exactly you said in a very modern words, knowing yourself by yourself. And Buddhism offers those methods to know yourself by yourself. That was very beautifully concluded, Rinpochela. So Rinpochela, I would say thank you to audiences, and then I will close down. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I will just give me 1 minute. So thank you for joining Ambedkar Caravan today. Actually, we are very sorry for not able to connect with you directly through a video of Rinpochela. Many of you wanted to see Rinpochela on the video live, but it wasn't possible because of the uncertainty, anicca. We don't know, not always so. So what we plan always doesn't happen like that. But Rinpochela was very kind enough to come on the phone, and he tried very hard to get connected, but technical issues and the storm in Bir couldn't let him connect with us on the video. But he was very kind enough to join us on the phone. We are very much looking forward to invite our beloved Khense Rinpoche again, so that he can talk about the methods, he can talk about his revolutionary and radical ideas to more and more audiences, so that we strive together to make this world a beautiful place. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will be seeing you very soon. Come back to Ambedkar Caravan for the regular talks like this. Thank you so much.